Two explosive stories that we're tracking on this historic night. One directly implicating President Trump himself in criminal wrongdoing. Today, the jury in the Manafort trial delivered 8 guilty counts and deadlocked on the other 10. But it's the Michael Cohen case that's shaking the political and legal worlds tonight. Trump's longtime personal lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, pleading guilty to 8 counts, including 2 criminal campaign finance violations he said occurred, quote, at the direction of the candidate, end quote. Cohen did not name the candidate in court, but the meaning appears clear. Cohen detailing a payment of $150,000 to a woman whose silence he wanted to secure. Those details match what's publicly reported about a payoff to Karen McDougal. Cohen saying it was done, quote, for the principal purpose of influencing the election. Cohen also pleading guilty to making an excessive campaign contribution. That's related to the payment of $130,000 made to a woman in October of 2016, just weeks before the election, at the direction of the same candidate. Those details match what we know about the Stormy Daniels payment. Moments ago, here's the prosecutor.
He worked to pay money to silence 2 women who had information that he believed would be detrimental to the 2016 campaign and to the candidate and the campaign. In addition, Mr. Cohen sought reimbursement for that money by submitting invoices to the candidate's company, which were untrue and false.
The bombshell news raising all sorts of questions, chief among them, what liability does the president now have? Amid all of this, the Paul Manafort news. Trump's former campaign chair found guilty today on 8 counts, 5 counts of tax fraud, 1 count of failing to file a foreign bank account, and 2 counts of bank fraud. The judge declaring a mistrial on 10 other counts after the jury failed to reach consensus. Trump, landing moments ago in West Virginia for a political event, said this.
Paul Manafort's a good man. It doesn't involve me, but I still feel, it's a very sad thing that happens. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. This started as Russian collusion. This has absolutely nothing to do. This is a witch hunt, and it's a disgrace. Had nothing to do with Russian collusion. We continue the witch hunt. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, what about Michael Cohen? Any comment on Michael Cohen?
You gotta move.
No comments at all about his old friend Michael Cohen. The bottom line tonight, the list of Trump associates found or pleading guilty grew. The danger for him has increased exponentially, and the scandal is now right at the doorstep of the White House. Joining me now from outside the courthouse is NBC News' Tom Winter, who first broke the story of Cohen's talks of a plea deal, former Watergate prosecutor Nick Ackerman, former FBI Special Agent Clint Watts, and the New York Times' Megan Twohey. Thanks to all of you for being here. Tom, let's start with you. I have something you may not have even had a chance to get your hands on yet. I think you sent it to me, but I don't know if you've read through it. It's the information that details everything that he said, everything that Michael Cohen has told them he knows. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, we had a full allocution from Michael Cohen. The proceedings took place nearly an hour and a half. Michael Cohen appeared to be anxious to speak. Once he got up, he told the judge that he wrote down some notes. He said that he was going to tell the judge exactly what he did, and he went through the counts. The first 5 counts are fairly simple because they just involve tax evasion, but they're fairly significant amounts of tax evasion to the tune of north of $4 million, according to Deputy U.S. Attorney Robert Khuzami. And then from there, he detailed an effort to get a home equity loan, a HELOC loan that he did not was not forthright with the bank as far as detailing the liabilities that he had, basically the expenses that he had, what he owed other people. And then he got to the charges that are obviously ricocheting across the political universe tonight, which are the ones that appear to involve the President of the United States, and that he was directed to make payments in coordination with the candidate and with the campaign of President Donald Trump to 2 women. One involved a payment to a woman for $150,000 that's believed to be Karen McDougal. The second to a payment believed to be Stormy Daniels in October of 2016, for $130,000. And for that payment, Michael Cohen told the court that he received restitution for that payment, or he received the money back for that payment from the candidate who believed to be President Donald Trump. So throughout throughout this investigation, this particular investigation, which stemmed from the special counsel's office from Robert Mueller, has been done in coordination with that office, been prosecuted by career and seasoned public corruption investigators here in New York, both on the FBI side as well as with the United States Attorney's Office. Today they brought home a significant criminal information that Michael Cohen has pled guilty to, 8 counts in total. He faces several years in jail at a minimum, Allie. He could face north of 6 years in jail as part of his agreement. So this was not a slap on the wrist by any means, what he was able to coordinate and what he was able to agree to with the help of his attorneys, with prosecutors here. And I think right now this is an investigation that has taken itself right into the president's campaign directly, and into actions that may have occurred once the president was elected. So we've got a lot of information and a lot of things to develop over the coming and read that criminal information
it's
that you were
remarkable.
referring to.
I've been going
it's
through
fairly
it.
voluminous.
And you're the detail-oriented guy, so you're going to get more out of it than I am. But I'm just reading now, count 7. 7 and 8 are the ones that refer to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. We're talking about the $150,000 payment to Karen McDougal. It reads here, Cohen caused Corporation 1 to make and advance $150,000 payment to Woman 1, including through the promise of reimbursement, so as to ensure that Woman 1 did not publicize damaging allegations before the 2016 presidential election and thereby influence the election. Nick Ackerman, Tom is being generous, saying that it implicates the campaign. The president has repeatedly denied knowledge of these things and repeatedly denied while president and while in office. This implicates the president of the United States.
There's no question about it. This makes the president of the United States an unindicted co-conspirator. This is the first time this has happened since Richard Nixon was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in the Watergate trial. This is a big
I will say,
deal.
I don't tend to disagree with you much, but you are actually wrong, because Rudy Giuliani has just released a statement that counters exactly what you're saying. He says there is no allegation of any wrongdoing against the president in the government's charges against Michael Cohen. It is clear that, as the prosecutor noted, Mr. Cohen's actions reflect a pattern of lies and dishonesty over a significant period of time. I don't know if you expected a different statement from Rudy Giuliani.
Not at all. This is the exact same kind of nonsense that Rudy Giuliani has been putting out for months. The fact of the matter is, if you read this indictment, he's doing it at the direction of Donald Trump. If he's doing it at the direction of Donald Trump, there's a conspiracy. It's an agreement to commit campaign financing crimes. It's a 5-year felony. This is a serious matter. Cohen didn't do this on his own. He didn't suddenly come up with the idea, oh, I've got to go pay Stormy Daniels $150,000. He had no connection to Stormy Daniels. He didn't know who Stormy Daniels was. The only way he would have had the ability to know any of that was because Donald Trump told him about it. Donald Trump told him that there was a danger that she was going to release all this information before the election.
And it's very, very well detailed in here, Megan. But the question, of course, most thinking people realize that what Nick said, that there's no reason why Michael Cohen would have been paying random people.
Well, I mean, what's clear is that I would actually sort of clarify that in the case of Stormy Daniels,
right,
her allegations that she had engaged in a consensual sexual relationship with Trump had been percolating prior to the time of her payoff. It was something that had been sort of rearing its head and going back down. So it was something that Cohen and Trump were both well aware of for some time prior to the payment to her, prior to the election. And so the question, though, is just there were these repeated denials. This is a mystery that's been kind of unraveling over the course of a year. At first, Trump and his representatives said he had absolutely no, he was not aware of these payments. Clearly, I mean, today that blows their statements out of the water. And so it's remarkable that these, and it's not just Trump. I mean, it's important if you are looking at potential other the other people involved in this potential campaign violation conspiracy. You're also looking at American Media Inc., and the CEO who was involved in
the
this,
information
David
is very
Pecker.
detailed about about American media and the fact that they had conversations with the campaign about helping Donald Trump out by buying stories or figuring out ways to avoid the publication of stories negative to Donald Trump.
Right. Prior to today, we knew that Michael Cohen had made the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels.
And that's been acknowledged all around.
Right, exactly. It wasn't clear that there wasn't a sort of smoking gun that had tied him to the $150,000 that was paid to Karen McDougal by American media to purchase it, to basically catch and kill her story of an affair. So today we've got not only Cohen directly involved in that, him admitting that, but also, once again, this huge bombshell that all of these things were done at the direction of Trump.
So let's narrow into what the issue actually is here. Michael Cohen is to many people an unsavory character and not particularly relevant if he did things with his taxi medallions. The question is what the liability is for the President of the United States. Landing Davis, Michael Cohen's newest attorney, has just tweeted today he stood up and testified under oath that Donald Trump directed him to commit a crime by making payments to two women for the principal purpose of influencing an election. If those payments were a crime for Michael Cohen, why wouldn't they be a crime for Donald Trump? Clint?
There's been a tell in this from the very beginning. The squads that showed up to do the search warrant were public corruption. This wasn't a white-collar case. This was not a fraud case we were investigating. We've got actions of the president-to-be. We've heard tapes. We've heard tapes that even say, let's do it in cash, essentially saying, I knew what I'm doing, I knew what the intent was, I knew that I should probably do it in this way. The question that I think we've been discussing is, does the president or then candidate Trump even realize that this is a violation? Is this a charge that you really can't do this? These guys all seem to be operating almost kind of like business as normal, but they were very sloppy in terms of how this went down. In terms of the investigation, there's direct connections. Usually in a criminal conspiracy, they would try and cloak or shelf the money and shell money in pieces to try and cover what the payments were for. This seems to be a very rapid case, and as just we saw with the special master, this moved very quickly after that evidence was proved. This means this case is very solid, in my opinion. They had the evidence lined up, and that's why Cohen is going this route today.
So, Tom Winter, a lot of people are going to say Donald Trump's going to say that he's lying. He said it already. They've put out a pattern of lies and dishonesty over a significant period of time. But this information has details. It talks about how Michael Cohen set up Essential Consultants, the company. It talks about the encrypted services that were used to communicate. I would imagine Michael Cohen wouldn't be in this conversation if he didn't come with information that the Southern District of New York would find compelling and have proof of.
Yeah, I mean, I think a number of people have asked me, they said, so what about a cooperation agreement and what does it say in his plea agreement? And I think, when you directly implicate and when you provide the context that Michael Cohen was clearly able to do in court today under oath, he was sworn in when he did that, and then you directly implicate the president and you're able to provide information which is contained in the criminal information as far as the specifics about it. And he also testified that he did these things with intent. And that's something that the U.S. Attorney's Office in court, the prosecutors said throughout, they wanted to point out that he had intent, not just on the charges that relate to the president, but on the tax fraud charges, on the count 6, as far as the charge tied to banking, all of that. He was in a position where he was doing this with intent, and he said so. So I think when you come across and you say those things, when you have the allocution that he did today, and he so clearly laid out all the things that he did, those are things that are going to be corroborated. And I think the criminal information and what the investigation was able to find clearly spells that out. We're also talking about banking issues here, and we're talking about crimes that involve a paper trail. I mean, when you have money that's transferred from person X to person Y, these are not things that you need somebody's testimony for. The bottom line is that's what happened. Money was transferred from one person to another, and that there's communications that can be found back and forth. So I think when you look at this, I think you look and you say there's a lot of underlying evidence to anything that Michael Cohen allocated to today in court. All
right, Tom, you've kept us ahead of this thing by a few steps all day with your amazing reporting throughout all of this, so thank you for that. Megan, I have to ask you, at some point, this statement that Rudy Giuliani's put up, again, nobody's surprised by the talking about Mr. Cohen's action reflect a pattern of lies and dishonesty over a significant period of time. That's not entirely untrue. So this is for a lot of people, this is tricky. Like, okay, Michael Cohen's all of a sudden my hero tonight. The guy was a bit of a bad egg.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Cohen he was known as Trump's fixer, a total bulldog, somebody who would go on the attack against anybody who was coming at Trump with allegations, stories, even if they were true. He was known to fiercely attack reporters who were, preparing stories that were going to reflect negatively on Trump. And so and to also change his story over time. But it's also interesting, Giuliani himself is somebody who has been part of a sort of changing narrative on this story. I mean, at first they said they didn't know anything about these payments. Then Giuliani acknowledged that Trump had been reimbursed that Trump had reimbursed Cohen for the payments made to Stormy Daniels. Trump tried to sort of walk back some of the things that Giuliani had said. They've had a very hard time getting their story straight. And so I think, but once again, the reimbursements, what happened with the money after the fact, it's interesting. What we've learned today is that Cohen actually submitted invoices to the Trump organization. He'd claimed before that the Trump organization was not part of this, that that there was no reimbursement through the Trump organization.
There are details in here of not only invoices submitted, but extra money Michael Cohen was paid, I guess, in goodwill or for services rendered. This thing is backed up by documents and receipts.
But I think the interesting documents that everybody will be looking for is go beyond the reimbursements that happened after the fact. It would be, what was the communication that happened on the front end? What does directing? When Cohen says that he did this at the direction of Trump, a federal candidate, what did that look like in practice? Were these conversations that they had? Was this something that was put in writing? And I think those are the records, basically the proof that Trump was involved on this on the front end, not the reimbursements on the back end, but the communication and the direction on the front end. I think that's where sort of all eyes will go moving forward.
Yeah, and there's some details in Count 7 about this. Clint, I want you to sort of help us understand the degree to which this isn't some rando who's been charged with some crimes. The fact is, there is now no way that the president, despite what Rudy Giuliani has put out, can creatively excuse himself from this discussion. This isn't about just people in the campaign.
No.
He is talking about having been directed to do this by a federal candidate, by the candidate. He does not. Trump's name does not appear in here, but you'd have to have lost all your marbles not to be able to put two and two together, unless you happen to think it's Hillary Clinton.
He was charged to try and keep outcomes in the election from occurring. That's what he was charged for doing. And the other thing that's important to note here that's different from the obstruction case, we talk about this all the time. He said, he said, she said, whatever it might be. This is not the case here, because there is documented evidence in that deal, in that agreement today, which is not just, oh, Cohen said this, Trump said this. It's Cohen said this, Trump said this. There is a tape out there. And, oh, by the way, here are these bank transfers. Here are these financial transfers. Here are these communications. That's a much stronger case than you're going to see.
Yeah, this is easy to read. This is not complicated.
Yeah, any sort of conversational thing. Money and communications, that's where the strongest cases always fall. And that right there is a document that's filled with those.
And I thought that it was interesting, if you listen to the prosecutor when he came out of the courthouse and was addressing the crowd, he said, after sort of spelling out the charges, he kind of went back to the campaign finance issue. And if I heard him correctly, said that he would be prepared to pursue additional campaign finance charges. So that really raises questions.
Seemed to imply the Trump organization as well, and maybe the president.
And maybe American media.
Hey, I'm Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.